This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Living Attentively is a discussion offered by Respectonomics. My name is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I am your voice of Respectonomics. And what we're going to be talking about today is capacity building. Now, living attentively is a practice or a purpose of allowing people to see how they are being treated and how they treat others. Living attentively means, in other words, being attentive to other people and to ourselves, and to find out how we bring these together. This message is called capacity building. And we're going to be looking at a practice that is evident in many organizations, and it's called capacity building. And capacity building, historically, what it really meant was that we would be able to provide staff, employees, and people with individuals, in other words, with training and skills that would allow them to increase their capacity. Interestingly, when you say to somebody, we're building capacity, often the immediate thought is, you're building more capacity because you want to make more money. You want to sell more things, and that will flow into profits and benefits to the organization. And capacity has a mixed message to it. In one sense, we love the idea of increased capacity. But in another way, we look at it and we go, do we really need it? Capacity is a mixed blessing, isn't it? We think in terms of how we increase the capacity of our house, for example, and we put in another room or we add on something to increase the capacity of our living space. The problem is that so much of our additional capacity is in fact an excuse for storage, for things that we either don't need, don't want, don't think about. I have a personal example of some storage that I use that resulted from boxes of stuff that came out of my office when I left my previous employer, retired 5 years ago. The boxes are still there and they have not been opened. So in other words, building capacity needs to be something that we recognize as being something that we are going to use and is going to be accretive. It's going to add value. Now, in the corporate world, we talk about building capacity, or capacity building, as it's often referred to, as a way where individuals are concerned of bringing up training and skills. And it's exactly intended to expand the scope of our work. Now, if we're going to expand the capacity of an individual, it's very important that we identify the purpose and the expected outcome of that new capacity. How often do we find that we are given new tools, new processes, new ways of doing things, maybe new production techniques, maybe new servicing protocols, and whatever they may be? But one of the things that's often not disclosed or not experienced is, what is the outcome expected from this new process? What is it it's going to do? Is it going to cut your day in half? Is it going to allow you to look after more customers? What is it? And what are the percentages? What are the realities of this new capacity? So from an individual point of view, as we become exposed to these capacity building techniques and models, we also need to be told and understood and engaged with what are the defining benefits that we expect from this particular process. So that's at the individual level. Institutionally, that we need a structure or a process that is going to allow these new capacity building techniques to be introduced. There's nothing worse than when leadership says we ought to be doing something, which is fine, and then you find out that we don't actually have the tools to do it. So it's very important that when an institution, an organization is in the business of building capacity, and is building capacity for the defining reason and defining purpose of increasing output on a way that is more effective, more productive, less costly, adds value, all of the good reasons for doing it. There has to be a structure or a process that makes that work. Quite clear, often that structure or that process it may be in place, but it may not be visible. It's very important that the structure and the process of building capacity and bringing in new techniques is very clear, and it is designed from a leadership point of view. Nothing better than a leadership that says we have structures in place by which we can increase capacity, and we want to make these available to you. And then there's the environment within which we work. And the environment within which we work is a sense of policy or a sense of culture. And this is crucially important because we want to have an attitude of expansion, an attitude of capacity, an attitude of growth. Stems, of course, right the way from the level of directorships, from the chair of the organization, regardless of whether it's a business, whether it's a community entity, whether it's a faith organization, a service organization, at all levels. We need to have this concept of an attitude of expansion. Now, the conservationist will say, do we need to grow all the time? And the answer is not so much to grow all the time, but to be able to make the best use of our resources. So, in other words, what we're trying to grow is the productivity, the way in which we use the assets. Now, the asset in this program is called Living Attentively, but Living Attentively is a subtext to the living asset. The living asset is the human being. And the human being, we the human beings, if we're going to increase our capacity, we need to be sure that people recognize our capacity. Our capacity could be defined or be repurposed as our potential. And one of the most important things about raising capacity is for individuals to be able to recognize not only their own potential, but also to use that potential to, with the help of the organization, through the structures and the processes, to be able to realize that potential. If our individual potential is not being realized, it is equivalent to being suppressed or repressed. It is not a healthy place to be. And some of us feel repressed and suppressed because we're not being allowed to express our potential into new capacity. Therefore, if we're going to talk about new capacity, productive capacity, capacity building, we need first and foremost to look at the individual and to look at the individual in order to raise that potential, to bring it out to its best level. There is one technique that is virtually infallible, and that is to dignify that individual. When we dignify the individual, we are implying the worth. We are exploring the worth of the individual and bringing that worth right to the surface. And when we bring the worth of an individual to the surface, that is when we find we are best able to increase capacity. And when we do that to another individual, we do it to ourselves as well. Dignity is reciprocal, it's mutual, it's bilateral, and it works. If we're going to build capacity, let us also be the ones to imply and to implore the use of dignity. I want to pass on one more comment. If you go to the usual sources of information on the internet and look up capacity building, there's all kinds of descriptions and understandings and protocols that are used, and I'm sure they're very successful and very powerful and very relevant. That's not the issue. But I want to bring to your attention one thing. In all of the ones I looked at, not once did I see the word dignity. I rest my case.